Oh, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. As I put my Discord into, is that what I do? I drag it across and put it into the live call-in? Or I just click on the live call-in. Oh, there we go. I've clicked on the live call-in, which means we're now broadcasting in Discord as well. Were you just waving at me?
Well, you waved at me. You started it.
I know.
Hi.
People don't know, but we've got the system here, and what you can see on your screen watching us right now, we have that on our screens, but then we also have all the controls and stuff around it. And at the bottom of our screen, under the screen, you can see we've got the windows, and I'm in one, and my screen's in another, and Chewy's another, and we can actually communicate like this, even if you can't be seen on the big screen. So I was just waving to Chewy before we started. Hey, everybody, how you doing, man? Man and mans, and womans, and people in between. I'm quite looking forward to tonight, really for one reason. Now, we'll get into this in a bit, but I've been a landlord, both as a owner of a house separate to mine, right? Having units within my house as well, so like a self-contained areas within my property, and having flatmates, like boarders as well. So I've sort of done all of that, and some of the conversation tonight I want to talk about has to do with landlording and a protest group in Wellington, which I think is really interesting, and what they're demanding landlords and rents to be moving forward. Now, let me just say this from the outset. There is a problem with the rental market in New Zealand. There's no question about that. And often when we talk about things like, you know, I've said this numerous times, we may have even said this together before, Chewy, where we're talking about how to fix the housing market. One of my common refrains is often, well, the housing market can't be fixed depending on supply and demand, but what could be fixed is the rental market. In parts of the world, in Germany and France and Italy, many people don't ever consider owning their own home because they have certain rules and regulations in place that enable people, for example, to rent for the rest of their lives. And I think what might be a better solution within New Zealand is to fix the rental market rules, because I think that's a more attainable get than the housing market per se. Now, these young fellas and fella S's and everything in between coming out of Wellington have some pretty radical ideas. I think a lot of them are kind of hilarious, and I don't mean to be too patronizing, but hilariously unrealistic and unattainable. But what's exciting about it, it's the start of a conversation that might lead to, you know, something else that might actually be effective and efficient and help the problem with the rental market in New Zealand today. So we'll have a look at that. But the thing is, you've been a landlord as well, Chewy, because you recently sold a place.
Yes, I was a landlord briefly, and it really did give me a bit of a perspective. You know, obviously, long time before that, being a renter, with the wide gamut of landlords, both good, absent, and shitty. And look, there's a reason I'm not a landlord now. I never intended to be one, but
so you kind of just fell into it.
Oh, look, I had no aims of being a landlord. That's why we got rid of the property as soon as we could. It was a case of circumstances, meaning that we were able to get another house, and that coincided with my sister really struggling to find an appropriate rental while she was studying here.
Yep.
So yeah, it was a family rental situation, but I treated her just as I would any other tenant.
As badly as you would any other tenant.
Oh yeah, especially because she's family; she can't go anywhere. No, it was a case of, look, we knew the rental standards were coming in. We knew that we planned to sell the house. Once we'd done it up a little bit, so there was a little bit of like, you're getting quite cheap rent while we bring this up to standard, sort of thing. And it was better than selling it at that point. But yeah, the whole thing out of that is it just puts such a focus on all of these like landlords groups and lobbies and that sort of thing going, oh, it's real hard to be a landlord. It's fucking not. Like I saw how much houses in that area were being rented out at, and I looked at my mortgage payments and I went, you could fucking cream money off this like nobody's business. Like, do the bare minimum, make shit tons of money. Who cares about the person that's in the house? We put in a heat pump. We fixed up all the things that we, when we lived in there, we were like, nah, it doesn't matter. But it does matter when it's someone living in that house and paying for the privilege. I could not get the mindset.
Yeah.
We had heaps of people say, oh, you hang on to it, you can make a good money. And I'm like, we don't want to do this. This can be someone else's house.
Look, let's keep going. Let's do this, eh? Let's have this conversation now. We've started the rental conversation. I'll say hello, Joey. We haven't really said hello yet. Hello, how are you? Good, yes. Okay, let's move on into this conversation. If you're a renter out there watching right now, then make sure you let us know what you think about all of this. And if you are someone who wants to participate in the show, you can obviously chat with us in whatever platform you're on, or I've just put into the YouTube chat. If you're not watching us on YouTube, you'll have to get to YouTube, the Discord server. And we have the possibility, if you come and join us on Discord, that you could jump in and actually speak to us as well. We won't push that too hard, but if you want to do that, you can do that. And remember, tomorrow night we've got a pre-recorded show talking to the director of Unprecedented, the Donald Trump and his children documentary series. So tonight will be sort of unless I know that Chewy's done this before and I've done this before, jump into the chat and hang out with people while it's playing. But this is the last night for sort of a last show until next week as well, if you want to participate and interact with us.
Quick point of order.
Yes, point of order.
Samantha Hayes there, studied with her. We went on the same broadcasting course, and as you can see,
I'm sure you did
fabulously for both of us.
So let's have a look at the story about this protest over rental prices and landlords.
Investors Group.
These renters feel ripped off, taking to the streets to demand better rights.
Yes.
Our group was formed on the basis of the idea that we really need in New Zealand the culture of renting to change, because it's just like completely out of control.
Agreed.
George Edwards is paying $260 a week for this cold, mouldy house. His landlord recently turned up unannounced when he had friends over.
He decided to come and shut everything down, which was very, very invasive. And we soon found out you're not allowed to add contracts, clauses like no parties into contracts.
Tenants Action Wellington wants change, and it's come up with 10 demands for landlords and property managers, including dropping all rent prices to 25%.
We'll go through the 10 demands, but this might be the place that one or two of what they're asking for. This might be part of the point where there's the stretch that I was talking about, but we'll have a look at the full 10 out of an article once this is finished.
Of the lowest government benefit, minimum tenancy contracts of 5 years, abolishing flat inspections and making landlords give a year's notice before selling or reoccupying the house.
Look, I can understand why tenants would want their rents to go down. It's not an easy situation for them at the moment, but these demands from this group are just outrageous. They're not practical.
I don't entirely agree with all of the demands that are made under the Tenants Action banner, but I agree with a lot of them.
The demands are aimed at all landlords and property managers, but especially Quinnovic. The protest.
Can I just say, props to News Hub for putting that on their nationwide broadcast. Like, no beeping, no nothing. And as Carl said, I went hard in the paint on that Quinnovic chant. So, and yeah,
they are
and props to News Hub.
Worst.
Are they? I've never dealt with them. Yeah. All right. Well, let's just finish off. There's only about 20 seconds to go.
Investors may be marching to Quinnovic's office, but the company says it hasn't heard anything from them today. Quinnovic declined my request for an interview, saying that the demands from this group would require a law change.
Any individual landlord could implement these right now. Now, if they so chose.
A choice these renters hope their landlords will make. Alexa Cook, News Hub.
So let's have a look at the demands, right? Before we do anything else. Here are the demands. All rent prices are permanently lowered to 25% of the lowest benefit. Landlords must provide evidence that they're addressing repairs, including accessibility issues, within 1 week of being notified by tenants. I don't mind that one. I think maybe if it was,
that's a solid one.
well, maybe 1 week. That's only 5 working days. I mean, maybe within 10 working days or something. But the general.
Just an email saying, "Hey, look, I've reached out to a builder or an electrician." They're not.
I don't know if that's providing
yet.
evidence, though. I mean, providing evidence. But anyway, tenants in substandard housing must be appropriately relocated at the landlord's expense during major repairs or renovations.
Yep.
I mean, no, I don't know if I'm on board with that one because, I mean, I think there are some, I mean, you're a good landlord, or you were a good landlord. There are some scummy landlords out there. If you're moving into a house and it is substandard, and then you demand to get moved out of the house somewhere else while they fix it, I would probably say just don't move into the house. Now, if something happened to the house while you were living in it, maybe different. But so there's a little bit of depends on the exact circumstances there, if you ask me.
I think the incentive there is if you're having tenants come into the house, make sure it's up to standard.
Yeah, I
You
agree.
don't have to do that.
I agree. Like I can imagine the house that I'm in right now, where my studio is, maybe renting this out one day and not living here. Like I already know that there's things I have to do. So for example, I don't have an extractor fan in the bathroom. And that's now part of the warrant of fitness for houses for tenants and stuff. So like that's what I will or would be doing if I did do that. Although I might do it anyway because it'll be better for the house. Okay, this is an interesting one. Minimum tenancy length is 5 years, right? I don't know how that would work for students, for example, in Dunedin on a 3-year degree, but it says tenants may exit at will. Now, again, I need a few more details on that. Does that mean just, hey, by the way, last rent, yep, gone. See ya. So at will is an interesting term. This is an interesting one. A permanent end to evictions during cold weather months, May to September, holiday periods, and emergencies such as natural disasters or pandemics. I don't mind that one. Although I guess there's a part of me, a distrusting part of me, which thinks how easily would it be for people to then, because like you get dirtbag landlords, let's be honest, you also get dirtbag tenants. Everyone who pays their rent up until April and then stops paying, and then they scarper in September. So, I like the heart of that concept, looking after people, but just like some landlords take advantage of some tenants, there will be some tenants that take advantage of the landlords. And in that situation, which might be the rarity, how do you look after the landlord in that situation? Just something to put out there. Like, I mean, I'm sure your family member would have screwed you over every second they could if they tried to. How about this one, Mr. Landlord? Abolish bonds and all, is that substitutes? So abolish bonds. Hand back all bonds from landlords to a tenant, regardless of contract. Costs of repairing any damages will be covered by existing rent payments. So as you're walking out the door, if you kick in every single wall, that will be covered by the last year's rent that you've paid, although that's no longer in the bank. Abolish all bonds. What do you think of that, Mr. Landlord?
Yeah, I look, as someone that has been renting for ages, I never really saw a problem with giving a bond. That wasn't any problem. The problem is when the bond has to be given back. Like it's been a rare occasion that a landlord has come back to me and gone, "Oh, yep, sweet as, you're getting back all your bond." The amount of landlords that don't seem to understand their responsibilities, like you can't demand that the carpet's got stain on it, so I had to replace all the carpet in the house. I'm keeping your bond. Or things outside of normal wear and tear is not covered by the bond. And It seems like a lot of property managers and a lot of landlords sort of go, "Oh, there's scratches on the door, a cupboard handle is missing. I'm keeping your bond." The idea of bond is so someone doesn't fucking dip out on a month's worth of rent or fucking smash holes in the wall.
Yep.
So I don't see that that's really necessary.
Yeah. Number 7, pets are allowed in all flats, including dogs. I mean, I'm a dog person, but I mean, I guess what I do is I think, what are the extremes? Yeah. So what are the extremes? So person owns 5 dogs that they keep them inside that are now inside all the time and sleeping. You know what I mean? It's like, what is the what are the extremes? How will that work? And because for both sides, what are the extremes of a dickhead landlord? What are the extremes of a tenant who wants to take advantage of the system?
Yeah. Look, I'm a believer in that should be something that is negotiable. At the moment, like, it is just like no pets, and people usually have a fucking cat that they don't tell their landlord or their rental agent about. Dogs are a no matter what size or that. Babies, fine. If you're talking about, people go, oh, it's the smell or the damage that they do to the carpet and that sort of thing. A cat can piss on the floor the same as a dog can, same as a baby can.
Do you know what
reason
I've done?
Babies aren't banned is because they're not allowed to by law.
What I've done in the past is taken a pet bond and also charged a bit more for a pet.
Yep.
Because obviously you charge for wear and tear on a property. That's a part of your overall rent. And if you had like a big dog, every chance is that there is going to be more wear and tear. So you might add $10, $15 a week onto the rent. I've done that before as well.
Now, here's the interesting thing. Pet bonds actually forbidden by law.
And oh, really? No, I've never done that.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, is it's always seemed like a good idea to me. Like, I would like that option of like, well, yes, you can have a pet as long as you're willing to do this, and whereas the landlord will not take the piss over it. But there's huge benefits to having pets. You'd hope that people are more stable because they own a pet, and it's good for mental health. And there's a whole lot of benefits to pet ownership.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, we need to start looking at tenants as humans rather than as money producing units for your portfolio.
Here's a couple more just to finish off these last three. So this is for the landlord. No entering the property uninvited at all, which I think is already... Yes. Well, I mean, you can give notice right now, 24 hours you have to come, but it says also flat inspections are abolished. So you can never do a flat inspection. Then the last two, landlords cannot ask prospective tenants for credit checks, employment history, or any other references. And finally, landlords must provide 365 days notice before selling or reoccupying the house. Now, I think you've earmarked a comment there to put on, which is pretty much what we said at the start. You want to bring that up? Which is not obviously, sorry, because you may disagree with me, person watching right now. Some of these I think are utterly ridiculous, but a starting point perhaps, and maybe a way to start looking at the broken rental system that we've got right now. There's some good ideas, yeah.
I mean, there's so many stories about landlords coming around for bullshit reasons. That aren't notified. Oh, I was coming around to mow the lawns. I was coming around, I didn't think you'd home, so I didn't think it'd be a problem for me.
You just got to give 24 hours notice. That's the law right now.
Yeah, I mean, you're not allowed. They don't even stick to that.
Yeah, but at the moment, you're not allowed to legally turn up uninvited. So that's already a current law.
What's the penalty?
I don't know, but if what you're saying is it's not being enforced now, then if it can't come around uninvited at all, then it's still not going to be enforced. But anyway, but look, let's just have a look at some details here, because I think this first one is really interesting. All rent prices are permanently lowered to 25% of the lowest benefit. Okay. Now, I actually contacted the group who were doing this because I didn't know what that meant. And this is the message I sent to them. Yeah. Because, I mean, what does that mean? 25%. I know what that meant, but what does that mean for rental? So this is what I wrote to them. I wrote, hey there, we're just going to talk about your protest on our live stream tonight. I'm looking forward to clarifying on something. Is your demand of all rent prices are permanently lowered to 25% of the lowest benefit per person, per room, per house, or what? Like a 4-bedroom house with 4 people in it, is that $60 per person, so $240 in total, or is it $60 for the whole house? Because it's not actually clear. And I say, what about if there was a couple in a room? Is it 60 per person, so 120 for that room, or is it just want to be accurate in my reporting? As an aside, the $60 is 25% of the lowest benefit. I had a quick look at the lowest benefit, and the lowest benefit at the moment is $233.75 after tax. They don't say 25% net or gross, so it's around $60. And they came back to me saying per room unchanged for couples. So therefore, it's $60 per room, which means if you've got a 4-bedroom house, no more than $240. And if you've got 4 couples in there, no more than $240. So, of course, that then raises my little lawyer's brain not that I'm a lawyer, and I go, so what happens if you're in a throuple? What if you've got you and two partners and you're in the same room? So that's three people now in a room for $60 a week. And what happens therefore if you have four people in a room at $60 per week? So
Stack 'em up.
these are the things with, I mean, this is not legislation. These are demands by a lobby group, but these are the things with legislation where this could go to, that you have to ask these questions, And then I thought, so what about if it's a married couple in this 4-bedroom house with 3 kids? Is that $60 for the married couple and $60 for each of the 3 kids? So that's $240. Or do the kids who don't get a benefit not be? So these are the questions that I sort of would need to flesh out a bit more. But without even fleshing those out, Mr. Former Landlord, how do you feel about legislatively not being able to charge any more than $60 per bedroom, full stop?
Yeah, I think they're talking about a very specific type of housing there. They're talking about entry-level renting, student accommodation, that sort of thing.
But that's not what the article said that we
No,
watched.
it's not. Yeah, it's not. And they've come at it from a very their own point of view. I think there's a huge argument for something like that for people that have decided to go quite big into student accommodation and that sort of thing. They mentioned Quinnovic, and I lived in Wellington for years and had friends that stayed in Quinnovic run properties, and they are the fucking worst. Wow. They don't treat their tenants as people. Their property managers are invasive. One of the things that they're talking about they're pushing back against is flat inspections, and that's because Quinnovic does the maximum level of property inspections that they can get away with legally, and even probably a little bit further than that, to be honest. And it's the idea of a property inspection is, again, you haven't broken any windows, put your fist through the wall, the doors are all still there. There's real basic sort of stuff. Quinnovic will pull you up on having a wet towel in the bathroom or have not done your dishes. It's not a question of the cleanliness of the flat. It's its watertightness and structural integrity.
So let's have a look at the $60 per room for people going into rentals. I've just, as you're talking, I've just dragged up this house here. This house is Northeast Valley in Dunedin, which is where Chewy and I are. Northeast Valley is a very common place for students to be. This place is, I think, 6 bedrooms. Did I see? 6 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and if you see by the layout, it's basically bedroom, and a little lounge. So this is set up. This is the exact kind of house you'd get in Dunedin, right, for students. Yeah.
Oh, I've got a good one for you.
Oh, good. So if we're looking advertising this house for $800K, let's just say that it's a really wealthy, person who buys it as an investment property, and they put $400K down, and so that means it's a $400K mortgage. $400K mortgage is going to cost you about $450 a week on a 30-year mortgage, and the most you could rent this out for is $360. 6 bedrooms at $60. I wonder as well about these ideas as to how that's actually going to work. And I wondered if it was passed as legislation, and no one's suggesting it will. Their demands by a lobby group basically is if private landlords would have to get out of the market, which would actually make rentals more expensive because there'd be fewer out there to actually do what these people are trying to achieve. Now, if they were talking about social housing, i.e. government provided housing, that's a completely different conversation. But as we heard in the article, this is aimed at private landlords as well. So, reality is this is probably a $600 a week mortgage after you put your deposit down, and you can rent it, according to these guys, out for a maximum of $360. So that's $600 a week mortgage. That doesn't include your rates or anything else as well. So I just wonder about now the reality of renting and the demands that are made, and also, without trying to poo-poo them too much, what that actually means for trying to fix the system. Chewy, you want to add something in?
If I can work out, here we go. I've got a good one for you here.
That is a student dive in Dunedin.
Cool. This is where I lived in 2002.
All right. Where is it? Sorry, it's not Dunedin then.
That is Dunedin.
Oh, that's Dunedin.
50 Brown Street. Me and the flatmates referred to this property as Gangrene Towers. Now, eight bedrooms.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, I do remember paying about $60 per room.
20 years ago.
20 years ago.
Yeah, I remember in the 1990s living in Ponsonby as well and paying $80 a week, but that was in the 1990s.
This was our living room. They've turned it into another bedroom there.
Wow, it's a big living room.
Yep. When I was there, this area was sagging and full of water. You poked it and it jiggled. It was cold, it was damp, it had a fantastic view, and our landlord was a really weird Christian guy who we saw once a year. But yeah, what they're talking about is rent at 2002 levels for this shithole.
Yeah.
It's and that's in Dunedin. You know, these guys are talking at Wellington where they're getting absolutely creamed. And I think it's a combination of landlords having to buy multi-million-dollar properties to get into the market, and then they're going to a place like Quinnovic to go, well, I need my property managed, and Quinnovic's gone, the rental market in Wellington is fucked. So we can charge top dollar. And we're really set up to absolutely maximize what we can squeeze out of these profit-making units that are students, are people that have to live in Wellington and have nowhere else to go because everybody's squeezing them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like there's a middle ground there, as we're so fond of saying, and it's the fact that the property market is fucked, and so the rental market is fucked, with absolute parasites like Quinnovic just fanning the flames.
Yeah, there's another comment which hasn't come up in our little machine because it's been made on Facebook by Daryl. Daryl says, by doing this, Tenants Action Wellington will lose any credibility they may have had, if any, if any they had, if any, do they lived in La La Land. And I think, as I said, I think that's probably completely fair and right, that they're a young group that's kind of, they've swung for the fences, as you said earlier. And maybe what you know what it's like when you negotiate, you know, you go, well, I want $1,000 for this, and you actually want 600, and so you then work your way backwards or whatever it is. I don't know if that's active or they genuinely believe that something like this is possible, because as you've just said, it's never going to happen. $60, 2002 rents today. That's just not going to happen. But is this a start of a conversation for them to go to someone, with someone, to help sort out maybe the other end of the spectrum where people are getting rorted? I don't know, but I mean, I never criticize people for starting a conversation. I may be critical of the content of the conversation, but to start the conversation, who knows where it may end up, that may benefit everybody. And
you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just because a couple of their ideas are in their current form unworkable or unpractical, doesn't mean that their other suggestions aren't or don't have a seed of a good idea.
I think there are some seeds of some good ideas in some of those.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, it comes down to a point of desperation in the Wellington rental market at the moment, that people are staying in borderline unhealthy homes and they're putting up with it and they're not making a noise because they know that they can't go anywhere else.
All right. Hey, listen, we're going to move on, but there's something that I saw these guys putting up that I want to mention to you, right? And I want to mention to you specifically, Chewy, because it involves part of your art, part of your craft, so to speak. Tenants Action in Wellington have talked about the protest that was held today, that they were a part of, that they put out there, and they said this is an inclusive event, right? This is an inclusive event. So no anti-vaxxers, TERFs, or other bigots are welcome. Now, I'm not a huge fan of anti-vaxxers or bigots, but I do like this new language that talks about an inclusive event. Now, I'm not going to show you what this is, but I'm going to read something to you. And I want to tell you I want you to guess what this is from, right? This is nothing to do with that now. This has just reminded me of something else, right?
Yeah.
There was a thing written the other day about a situation. I can't tell you the situation because I'm playing a game with you right now.
Okay.
All right. I will explain it after, because I want you to guess. There is a thing written up by a group about an event, and this is what they said in their write-up. It says, we believe in diverse voices and the freedom of artistic expression. Could you possibly guess what those words are associated with in this example I'm going to give you. Remember, we've moved on from the rental thing. It's nothing at all to do with that.
Okay.
We believe in diverse voices and the freedom of artistic expression.
Okay, well, since you mentioned my craft, it's either stand-up comedy.
Correct?
Yeah.
So, but do you have any context that would go with that kind of thing? We believe in diverse voices and the freedom of artistic expression.
Is this from overseas?
Yeah.
Has it got something to do with Dave Chappelle?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Because I noticed he got booted out of a venue.
That's exactly what it is. This was the notice that was put up when Dave Chappelle got booted out of the venue, and that sold out show, 1,500 seats. Dave Chappelle got removed from it for whatever their political reason was, as a part of the reason, or the part of the write-up to saying that Dave Chappelle was banned. They wrote, as a part of that, we believe in diverse voices and the freedom of artistic expression. And I just thought, has the word irony been taken out of the dictionary? Does it disappear these days?
Yeah. I mean, why not say exactly what caused it?
Yeah.
The venue got a hell of a lot of backlash over Dave Chappelle's latest material, which could be seen as transphobic. People pushed back against it, and the venue went, "Oh, holy shit, there's a lot of you. Okay, we don't want this noise." Why not just say that? Why not just tell the truth? Rather than try and we'll use some nice fluffy language and we'll move on. Because ultimately, yeah, you're right. I don't agree with Dave Chappelle's latest stuff. I think it's really fucking basic, to be honest.
He's a basic bitch.
But he says it, and people are pushing back against it, and it's up to a venue to decide whether they want to put him on. Like, he had no trouble selling out another venue. I think less seats, but at a higher price. So he definitely got what he was going to get anyway. He's got a shitload of publicity out of it. But yeah.
I think what we do quite a lot in this show is we commentate on the commentators. Yeah, it's the thing that you'll hear often from this conversation. And this is not a commentator per se, but we're commentating on language a little bit here. And it feels very, I mean, that's why I said at the start, I'm not even talking about what the political conversation is here. You've brought up some positions you have. I just am purely looking at this when you're banning someone and you're banning them from doing their craft in your location. And at the same time, you're saying, we believe in diverse voices. Well, and the freedom of artistic expression. Yeah. So I all I'm just saying is, if I'm being really gentle and not being too judgy on these people, which I'm happy to be, there's a juxtaposition there, if nothing else.
Yeah, and I see that. I'd give them a lot more credit if they just said, "Hey, look, we want nothing to do with Dave Chappelle, because his current routine is borderline, just rubbish." But yeah, got to have those fluffy words.
When I read that in the renters protest thing, it just made me think of that, what I saw online today, and I thought, you're a comedian, you're a stand-up, I'd throw it at you just for a bit of a lark. Hey, let's talk about petrol prices. This is not really necessarily a big story per se, but I wanted to I worked something out the other day when I finally did some numbers around the US's in the United States. There is a gas price shortage, expensive money type gas thing going on at the moment. Yeah, like around the rest of the world. I know I'm eloquent with my wording.
Is that the one that Joe Biden has caused?
Yeah, yeah, that one. Just like he caused it.
I see all of these references to stickers in the southern United States that people are putting on gas pumps, pointing at the price, where it's got Joe Biden going, "I did that." Just the level of political discourse over there.
I think I'm probably a little bit showing my privilege here, as I kind of use this thing we do a bit like Twitter. I just have a thought and I go, I've got a thought. I want to say what my thought is. And that's really all this is. So I'm just doing this because we're going to say Dunedin's the best, obviously. Dunedin's basically the cheapest petrol in the country at the moment, $2.51 at the NPD. Self-service station in Andersons Bay. In Wellington, the cheapest was $2.65, which surprises me. Why is it? I would think that it would be cheaper in the bigger centres, especially places with bigger ports that probably the fuel comes straight to. I've never really understood why. Like when I used to work and talk back, we always hear from people going, "Oh my God, is that all you're paying for petrol in Auckland? We're paying in other parts of the country." But it's a weird little anomaly at the moment. But $2.50 a litre. Yeah,
It's
that's probably what it
favoritism.
was.
Someone's being paid off with cheese rolls in space. It's the only reason for it.
Here's the thing, yeah, and this is what I did. I've got my little bookie thing here with some numbers on it. There's a lot of hubbub in America at the moment where gas is $5 a gallon, yeah, and most of us in New Zealand go, well, I drove a big gas guzzling vehicle. That's the worst economical vehicle I've ever had. I thank the good Lord every day that I live in Dunedin, because I drive about 4 kilometers a day. If I lived in Auckland, I'd be paying probably $150 every 3 or 4 days in petrol. So I drive a 50-litre tank, and that's the equivalent of 13 gallons, right? 13 US gallons. Now, at $5 a gallon, which is what they're all complaining about, 13 gallons is $65 US to fill up a car, right? That's about 100 New Zealand dollars. I'm paying 150 at the same time. Now, that's not the only part of it. They're complaining because before Biden came in, and before the war in the Ukraine, all that kind of stuff, gas was $2.40 a gallon. That's $32 US to fill that same 50-litre tank, which is about 50 New Zealand dollars. So that means for us to get to the price of fuel that America was at within 2 years, we'd have to be paying $1 a litre. And I just thought it was really interesting because the thing I thought about that is there's this drive around the world to get people out of petrol-powered cars, or to get more economical cars. Like, why the hell would you get a more economical car if you're paying the equivalent of $1 a litre for fuel? Like, what's the incentive to get out of it?
That's why their cars have gone the other way to literally every other market. You know, you've got the F-150s and the huge urban assault vehicles, double cab monster trucks that they drive around in. It's because they're paying a tiny little, why would you? I can drive a Hummer.
Yeah,
and then when the price goes up, they go, oh, holy shit. I see a comment on Reddit the other day about someone asking how much petrol was in Europe, and they're like, how do you stand for this? And I go, well, our cities are smaller. We walk everywhere, or we go on the train, or you don't have any of those things. You have big spread out cities and no public transport.
I mean,
because of your petrol industry and your car industry.
I worked in petrol stations when I was a student in the 1990s. Yeah, that was my part-time job. Worked in petrol stations, Shell petrol station, Shelley Beach Road, or Beach Road, I think it was Beach Road in downtown Auckland, and in Mission Bay. Worked at the petrol station there as well. And I can remember petrol being like 80 cents a litre. So basically, it's funny, we were just talking about rent between now and 2002. Basically, America, when they were at $2.40 a gallon, so this is before the price increase, right? So within the last 18 months, we're paying for fuel what we were paying in 2000 per litre for fuel. They do it per gallon. I was talking to, and I forget his name. There was an American commentator I had on my podcast, and he was basically saying no other country in the world could afford to live like the middle class in America live. And it's stuff like this. The middle class in America buy a $25,000 car that costs 90 grand in New Zealand, and they fill it for 30 fucking bucks. That costs $150 to fill over here, and I don't know quite how to feel about it. I'm like, how is this even possible? What are they doing, and why is it being supported from within? Because it doesn't seem sustainable. It's like getting every resource you can and prostituting it for as little as possible, and there must be somewhere where it just actually falls over eventually, and everything goes kaput, and the rest of the world goes, hey, welcome to the real world.
We keep on, whenever we talk about the States, we always circulate back to the same thing. It's a house of cards made of kickbacks and corporate socialism. Tax money's going to the gas industry, going to the automotive industry. Public transport was killed over there in favor of both of those industries. Their cities have sprawled out. People live in the suburbs. They drive everywhere. They've got motorways everywhere. They don't have extensive public transports for cities of similar size compared to around the world. And that's fine when everything's going good. And I think we're all pretty clear that we're starting to see the things not going so well over there.
Yeah,
So-
but the interesting thing is even they're not going well, right? So let's say the fuel prices at $5 a gallon is only two-thirds what we're paying.
Yep.
If you go to transfer their US dollars to New Zealand dollars, it's still only two-thirds what we're paying.
Yep.
So they're not going well. It's still exponentially better than the rest of the world.
Oh, they have no idea. Absolutely no idea.
Speaking of no idea, Christopher Luxon. No, I'm just kidding.
Where is he now? Is it Nelson or maybe somewhere in the Mediterranean?
I want to
can
talk
never
about.
tell.
I want to talk a bit about the. It's a strange thing because I think we put forward a really good case yesterday that this whole Facebook thing is a load of bullshit. Basically, it's not the important issue, in my opinion. Right? It's really not the important issue. The interesting issue is how Christopher Luxon is trying to sort of be the everyman and not own his wealth like John Key did so well. John Key was like, yep, I'm a millionaire. Yep, I'm worth $50 million. Yep, I holiday in Hawaii. I've actually got an apartment in Hawaii, all these things. And like he owned it. And I think New Zealanders accepted it more. And it seems that Christopher Luxon, especially in the cost of living crisis, is sort of trying to be a bit more coy and hide from it. That to me is the actual interesting story. The Facebook thing is neither here nor there, because as we said last night, just so everyone knows, right, sometimes when we put up a Facebook post or a clip on YouTube and we say, well, it's 10:26 at the moment, that was because it was when 10:26 when we recorded it. It wasn't actually at the time, just like when Christopher Luxon went, today I'm in Te Puke. It was today when he was in Te Puke, and it doesn't matter that it was uploaded a few days later. So that kind of thing to me is a load of horseshit. That's a stupid conversation that the media seems to be focused on. However, I just wanted to say a couple of things. Some in the media seem to be picking up on our angle. Finally, they're listening to us, Joey. Finally, they're listening to us. So let's have a look at a clip of TVNZ this morning where Shane DePoe and Hooten were talking about this situation. Shane DePoe is the guy who actually seems to be getting, and he actually uses, I think we used the word last night, Chewy, authentic. Luxon's not being authentic.
Shane's very good. I follow him on Twitter, and he was part of almost a political panel show called The Party People, and he was excellent at that.
Right. So let's have a listen to what they have to say. And then we want to have a look at a spin-off article with Duncan Grieve, because to show sort of the hysteria that some of the media are putting out about the Facebook posts. I mean, we've talked about Susie Ferguson before in very positive ways. Duncan Grieve has written a piece about Susie Ferguson and about she had the leader of the opposition for 8 minutes and basically spent 7 of that talking about how can we trust you if your Facebook posts aren't accurate. It's fucking ridiculous. So let's have a listen.
And not saying there's anything wrong with taking a break. Politics is a grueling job, but what did you make of the debacle, Matthew?
Well, we're talking about it, so it was a debacle. That's the way these...
That's a ridiculous thing Matthew Hooten just said. We're talking about it, so it's a debacle. So everything we talk about is a debacle. It's a stupid thing to say, but we'll go on.
Things work, and it has all been over social media, and it's sort of the third in a row. There was the speech he gave abroad where he appeared to be criticising Kiwi business people for being soft, when ironically the softest corporate job in New Zealand is CEO of Air New Zealand, because if you go broke, you get bailed out.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was the abortion debacle, and these are coming a bit too fast for him. I don't think anyone really thinks he controls his own social media account. It's run by staff, but he's the boss. He has to take responsibility for it, and he looked like a dick.
Yeah. No holding back. Oh, yes.
Yeah. No. Hey, look.
Shane?
Just pretend to be who you are. Don't complain about your coffee going up by 50% when you and your wife and your kids fly at the front of the aeroplane, go to Waikiki in the middle of winter. Just don't pretend to be someone else. Be authentic. And I think that's what called him out. And, I saw that post. I thought he wasn't in Te Puke on that day. There was no doubt about that. And it's fundamentally a lie. And Matthew was right. He ended up looking like a dick. But, this is all accumulative, mistake after mistake, bumbling. He's had a bit of a sweetheart deal from the media. I think the torch will be on him in terms of people watching him and how they view him. In the meantime, his deputy was down in Wellington doing the mahi.
Right.
Another quick comment. I think there's just a short one from Shane DePoe. Then we'll jump into it. There's only 25 seconds about being authentic.
But also with John Key, we got what we saw. You know, he had a beautiful mansion. He was a money trader. He was into the kill, and we like that. And he didn't pretend to be anything else. But, you know, you can't pretend to show a level of empathy and deny the fact that you own 7 homes. And as a result of your own tax policy, you're going to get $24,000 per year return in terms of tax rebate and be $18,000 better off.
So there you go. So some of the media are now picking up on that, which is good. And I mean, like, I'm not trying to say, yes, they're listening to us, because they're obviously not. But that's the story. The story is actually sort of optics, Luxon optics, and that's where the biggest failing is, because I think Matthew Hooton about, you know, because we're talking about it means it's debacle is nonsense. And I'll say it again. I think the Facebook posts are being pointed out so much, that's a nonsense as well, because I guarantee you, if you're in love with Jacinda, there will be posts that she records or videos or whatever the day before they get uploaded the next day. It's just because he got the tense wrong about today. That's not
such a
the
minor
smoking
thing.
gun. Yeah, it is absolutely minor thing.
It's dumb. Like any social media team would, worth their salt, would have stopped that from happening. You know, just don't, you know, it's like both me and you worked in radio, and I pre-recorded radio shows where you're like, you don't talk about the weather, you don't talk about any, you know, you can do it. But yeah, that's not the scandal. The scandal is, you know, it's not even him going, I don't care if he goes to Hawaii. The guy's got money. You know, we know he's probably not sticking around and supporting the New Zealand tourism industry. He's going to bugger off.
Well, I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know if it's a scandal. I mean, a scandal implies he's done something wrong. I just think they're reading the room wrong. That they're trying to hide his luxurious lifestyle. And they shouldn't. I mean, like Shane DePoe said then, like we said last night, John Key just went, yeah, I'm worth millions. Right, I want to run the country.
See, that's fine when everything's going well in the country, and people can sort of go, oh yeah, I can forgive the guy. You know, things aren't necessarily going well for a lot of people, and he's trying to appeal to them by going, we know it's tough out there for your average New Zealander. Well, I don't personally know that. I'm untouchable. I've got so much money. It just doesn't come up with me and my friends. But I'm told that the average New Zealander is doing
my cleaner.
Well.
My cleaner tells me her coffee is so much more expensive these days.
My gardener said the funniest thing the other day. He couldn't afford a full tank. I don't know what he meant by that. Anyway, laters. You know, he's trying to be something that he's not, and it's that authenticity that Shane there was talking about. But it plays into another thing, and it's something that I've said about Luxon many times. He is an amateur at this, and I would go as far as to say he is not very good at this. There are so many times, you know, and the thing with the masks overseas, the thing he said about New Zealand business, now this, boom, and he'll make a statement, and then he'll walk it back, and then someone will tell him what he actually has to say, and then he'll say it. It is rubbish. From and it's got all you hot and bothered. We got the R18 part of BHN.
Luxon, I've got all hot and bothered.
If I make another good point, you're going to take off the t-shirt.
Wow! When you said that, boom, I was like, do you remember the Venga Boys? Boom, boom. I want you in my room. That's what I thought when you said that. And that's why I took my shirt off, because I was getting all hot and bothered thinking about the Venga Boys. See, I used to work at More FM, the Venga Boys.
The Venga bus is coming, and you should be worried about that.
Let's have a look at the piece from Duncan Grieve. I messaged Duncan tonight, and he's busy. Probably would have come on and had a chat to us. He's offered to have a chat to us tomorrow, as has Michael Baker. I said he was coming on tonight. He had urgent business today, and I missed him. And we're going to do a pre-record tomorrow night, so we won't be talking to Duncan or Michael Baker under all that, because we're doing a pre-record. The Te Puke affair, how Morning Report saw a social media flub and smelled a cover-up. It's a great piece. You should go check it out on the spin-off. I'm not going to read the whole thing through. Here's some of the questions that Susie Ferguson asked in her 7-minute conversation. At 57 seconds, it kind of looks like a cover-up. It's got that sort of feel to it. Was this a mistake, or was it a strategy? Another question. It gives the impression that you're working when you're on holiday. Do you accept that? Another one. Does this dent your credibility? We're discussing trust in you. Now, all these questions are based around the Facebook post, not about what we're actually talking about. I'm going to play you a little bit of the conversation. I've just kind of picked out a random piece because it does go. The interview is 8 minutes and 20 seconds. And obviously, look, the last question is at 7 minutes, 7 minutes 01. You don't think you're in a situation where you're having to make things up on the fly. So at 7 minutes out of 8 minutes, they were still fucking talking about the Facebook posts. And they had the leader of the opposition on the phone. Let me have I'm going to play just a couple of the questions so you'll get a bit of a gist of it.
I don't think anyone would begrudge anybody a holiday.
Well, actually, I'm going to push back on that as well. I don't think anyone would begrudge anyone a holiday. That's sort of what a whole bunch of people are doing. Basically saying, why the fuck have you gone on holiday? You're supposed to be working. So actually, I find that comment to be a little bit disingenuous, personally.
At this time of year, especially with the weather that we've been having. But it's a question about being upfront about it. And it's a question about whether, when you talk about a cost of living crisis, whether having a flash holiday is the best thing to do.
So, Susie, I think I'll be really upfront about it yesterday. I think that's what we want to see in our leaders, that when you get it wrong, you call it, you make a mistake, you say it. So
I actually think that Christopher Luxon's been really generous. When we get it wrong, it was it was basically the wrong tense, past tense rather than present tense. That's the error here, right? In the actual Facebook post, not in the bigger picture, but in the Facebook post, that's the actual error. And he's kind of mea culpaing. I wouldn't be. I'd be going like, do you understand how social media works? Yeah. Not everything's live in the moment. What are you talking about? I'd be actually I'd push back quite hard against it. He's not.
It does come back to a question of trust, though. Because do we trust that that's a mistake, or do we trust the fact that he got caught out in something? I'm still not all the way there.
No. It was no. Are you honestly saying that if he tried to sell it as real, that all those people he saw in Te Puke wouldn't have gone, he wasn't here today? Of course, that there was the reason. If it was a planned thing, he wouldn't. It's like the moon landing. Where are all the people that say it was fake? There's none because it was real. If they were trying a strategy to pretend they was actually there on that day, there are far too many witnesses. Far too many witnesses to sell that story.
None of them were wearing masks. They could have all been isolating. And unable to make a statement. So
let's play another 20 seconds of this.
You don't try and hide it. That's what we did, and so that's what I've owned.
Well, but did you try to hide it, though? That's the question. It sort of feels like you did try to hide it, Mr. Luxon.
Well, see, I don't know how much clearer I can be with you. I did front it yesterday. I said we got it wrong.
You said you thought it wasn't misleading yesterday initially.
Well, I can tell you, Susie, there was no attempt to mislead anybody. It was well known I was on holiday.
But was it misleading or wasn't it misleading?
Anyway, it goes on. So this is something that Duncan said in his piece. What makes the interview more uncomfortable is that it feels like that it feeds, it's my dyslexia kicking in, that it feeds into what is already a well-established perception on the right that RNZ is more inclined to look favourably upon Labour and the left, and that Ferguson on Morning Report is the most egregious example of this lean. The ACT Party has gone so far as to boycott the show, so convinced it is that its positions fail to get a fair hearing, though not just because of Ferguson. Now, you can argue, of course, the Prime Minister has done that on ZB as well. So that's what they're doing. I'll read this last paragraph. I can hear you chomping to get in, but then I'll throw it to you. Come on, drink your beer. In this interview, though, this is talking about, Ferguson. In this interview, though, she went far beyond any rational and proportionate response to the scale of the alleged offence. After 4 excruciating minutes raking over the posts, she turned to the location of his holiday. Ferguson seemed to question his patriotism in leaving the country at all. Do you consider spending your holiday and indeed your tourism dollars in New Zealand? Or didn't you consider? Luxon remained calm and polite. True, I agree with that. But was clearly nonplussed at the bizarre direction the interview ended up taking. Then Ferguson returned to the posts and never quit.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Come on, what you got? Come on, what you got, Chewie? Come on.
Look, she touched on a point that I was trying to make earlier as well, is that it was a good opportunity to spread some money into the New Zealand tourism market that is doing it tough. But
Do you honestly think, though, that any of our political leaders could Jacinda Ardern go somewhere right now and actually have a holiday in New Zealand?
And that is a fair point, and I want to acknowledge this. I'm not Luxon's biggest fan. I'm not National's biggest fan.
Really? I'd never noticed that, Joey.
I've hidden it. But I don't, like, you're right. You can't begrudge politicians the chance to go away on recess and have some family time. And if this guy's able to go to Hawaii, awesome. You know, good for him. We didn't really give a shit when it was John Key as well. No. You know, apart from a little bit of envy grumbling, and that's fine as well. I just think Luxon is just bad at this. He's bad at thinking on his feet. He's bad at answering when he does flub something, and I don't know if he just doesn't have a very good team around him, or he doesn't listen to his team. He's just not a good thinker on his feet.
Thank you for coming back to that, because I wrote that down this afternoon. It's famously reported that John Key told him not to run for leadership until after the 2023 election. Mm-hmm. He said John Key's advice to him was, wait for it. There's going to be fallout after Collins and after Bridges and all those sorts of things. Remember when Don Brash went up against Helen Clark, and Don Brash had that Orewa speech, and he like surged in the polls, and it was like, this is the right time. And then over the next 18 months, ironically, about how far out from the election it was that Luxon took over, he just slowly dwindled, and Helen Clark was our prime minister again. So it'll be interesting to see. And I think what you're saying speaks maybe to some experience as well. John Key told him to wait till after 2023 and then go for the leadership. Luxon's chosen to go early. I guess in about a year from now, we'll find out if that decision, because if he loses, no, mind you, Helen Clark lost the first time as well in 96, I think it was. So he could lose and then come back and still do it. But if he loses, it's all, I mean, just ask Donald Trump. It's also a slight on your credibility for doing it again.
I think we're at a reasonably dangerous point in New Zealand politics at the moment, where if you lose an election, everybody's quit afterwards.
Say that again. Sorry, I just got distracted.
So every time someone has lost an election, in recent memory, they've quit straight afterwards. You know, and I think, oh no, did Judith Collins stick around, or was she after that? I can't remember. But anyway,
so many of them.
You know, some of these leaders just need to go, you know, we might not win this one, but we're going to be ready for the next one. And I'm going to take you all the way through and have the actual team behind you, not with sharpened knives like there has been in National for so long, but with actual genuine support and a desire to win and some good ideas and the ability to answer a question.
And look, I kind of was a bit reticent in having this conversation tonight because we sort of had it last night, but I just wanted to come back. I just wanted to come back to the idea that I want to encourage us to always be fair. I mean, it doesn't matter where we come from politically. And I think what's fair at the moment is there is a beat up going on about Facebook posts. And I don't think it's a scandal. It's not the words I would use, other than what I think is the interesting story, which is how Luxon is trying to sell himself to the public, and he's running away from his wealth. That's what I think is the interesting story. Now, you watching may not. You might think that the interesting story is Facebook posts. Fine. But there will be Facebook posts by the Labour Party between now and the election that will say, spent the day in XYZ, and it won't be on the day that they did it. I guarantee you that will happen either on the national page or some individual MP's page. It's going to happen because that's what social media is. Yep. So it's not, and I'll tell you what, if that does happen, the media better have the same crack at those Labour MPs as they've had at Christopher Luxon.
Oh, 100%. I think it's almost like, I mean, we mentioned the Facebook post. I think it's almost people's engagement into a lot of this sort of stuff is at the meme level. Like, who can get the spiciest meme off politics? Right. You know, this one's had a whole bunch of where in the world is Christopher Luxon today. I really enjoyed Talofa Aloha.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's some good ones there. But I mean, those are funny if you want to dunk on the other team. But they're not getting to the meat of the things that we should be discussing a year out from an election.
Yeah.
You know,
I was about to look up.
I like to dunk on them as much as possible, but I also want people to put their feet to the coals and actually, have we got a decent answer on how they're going to cut taxes, not cut services, increase spending in some things, and pay down debt? No. I want that to be the only question he gets until he fucking answers it.
I was just looking, I was Googling as you're talking about my favorite meme so far, which was, Mia Quimby on the beach. And he's got the guy playing the steel drum walks past him, and he's like, "How did you get into the mayor's office?" And it pans back, and he's got a set up. He's in Bermuda shorts, and he's down in an island in the Caribbean somewhere, and that's got the Christopher Luxon's face. I thought that was the best one. I mean, that kind of stuff is cool. It's clever. It's clever. Hey, listen, dude. That's pretty much all our news stories, but there is one sort of little. It's not news. It's sort of more of a human interesting. And I know you're a bit of a movie buff and you like your movies, and it involves George Lucas, this story. So I want to throw one more thing at us. It's not really involving George Lucas, but well, it sort of is, but it's not. I saw this come up on Twitter today. Stranger Things is being edited retroactively by Netflix. Is this the beginning of a dangerous TV trend? Now, what they're doing is they're fixing mistakes, right? That's the retroactive. When I saw that headline, I thought, oh gosh, what have they offended something based on the 3 years ago and they changed it? No, what it actually was, there was a date. In an interview with Variety in early June, the sibling directorial duo confirmed plans to George Lucas, i.e. retrospectively edit, as has been done with Star Wars. Let me see if I can find exactly what it was. Okay, so owing to a fan-identified plot hole is a simple mistake of an expensive series costing $30 million an episode. The creative team set an episode of Stranger Things on the 4th of March, forgetting that it had been established as Will Ryer's birthday. So they're going to go in and retrospectively edit it. And I think there's a couple of things about that in particular. One is that when stuff's streaming, like when you watch something on TV or you buy it on DVD, you've got it permanently. But when stuff's streaming, like if I make a mistake in a podcast or an audio podcast, I can just go in and go uploaded the new version, and it uploads the new version to everyone's devices who downloads it, or 12 people who download it. So it's interesting that this is probably more available and accessible during the streaming wars, as South Park has done for the last couple of weeks. And it made me think about two things, and then you can jump into it. So this is one based on content, right? A content or a continuity mistake. We all know probably about the famous one from Game of Thrones, where they literally left a Starbucks cup on the set that didn't get seen until it was. Actually, I'll just mute this because it might get us kicked. There was a Starbucks cup that they literally did not see until it was broadcast. No one on the set saw it. No one on the obviously there it is, Starbucks right in front of the Queen of Dragons.
My immersion is broken.
So, and they went back and digitally removed that retrospectively. And I did think, because this is what I thought about. So that's obviously an error, like I don't know, some kind of error. I did think about like retrospectively editing things based on a new level of acceptability within conversation. So this is a program called Thank God You're Here. It's like it's a show out of Australia, and it's an improv show where they have a very well designed set, and they have famous comedians and actors standing outside the set. They walk into the door not knowing what they're going to walk into, and as soon as they walk into the door, someone from within the set who knows the storyline goes, "Thank God you're here," and then they start a scene with them, and the comedians have to actually improvise everything, right?
I have never heard of this. This sounds amazing.
Oh, it's cool. It's really good. Yeah, Thank God You're Here, it's called. So this was, I don't know this guy's name, but he's a comedian. He's one of the guys who came on. He's come on as a doctor. It's set up as a, like a, what do you call it when you go in and have a class to have pregnancy? Lamar's class. Mm-hmm. And this is a very small thing, and I'm not being overly sensitive to this, but this is one of the answers he gives.
And Dr. Flagergan, when it comes to giving birth, what's the biggest mistake that people make?
Well, trying to do it as a man. If you do it as a woman, it's more comfortable.
What are you saying, mate?
So that's all. Look, there's Reece Darby and Cal Wilson's there as well, Kiwis in there. But look, I know it's not a very small thing, and I think we don't matter. But at some stage, some people might decide that actually all of society doesn't want to say women have babies, that people have babies because men can get pregnant, all that kind of gender type thing. And I thought that could be a retrospective edit as well. It could be based on that. It could be based on content. It could be based on a mistake. And I just thought, Chewy, you were a bit of a movie buff in that, and it interested me. The Stranger Things, like there's that famous one in Forrest Gump, where I think on the grave of Jenny, spoilers, the date's wrong. Like it says Tuesday the 22nd of some year, but if you go back and have a look at that, it wasn't a Tuesday or something like that. But they never changed.
Think of one of my favorite ones actually.
Okay, tell me.
So Titanic.
Yep.
And obviously James Cameron, spare no expense. I want this to be super accurate. When it released, I think a fan wrote in to tell him that his night sky was wrong for that particular date. And the James Cameron was like, well, I'm not fucking having that, am I? And
really?
So they went back and digitally altered the sky to be accurate for the date of the sinking of the Titanic. The stars were all in the right place and stuff like that. I love that because it was obviously someone sort of going, well, actually, James Cameron, you haven't got the sky right. So the whole movie's rubbish. And James Cameron's gone, well, I've got a shit ton of money and the ability to change it. So I'm going to.
So tell me now what you think about these things, about retrospectively editing content and I guess movies and TV. What are your thoughts?
Look, I don't have a big problem with it so far. I mean, you mentioned George Lucas. Obviously, someone should have slapped the digital editing tools out of his hands before he even got to that. Look, there is a danger editing art. But I don't think we're at that point yet that we need to worry. I like if they're fixing a stupid little continuity hole around a date, that's not a problem. When you start like digitally changing faces and removing actors because they did something stupid on Twitter, we might have more of an argument around that. You know, nobody's going back and deleting Dave Chappelle out of stuff yet.
Yeah,
you know, there's just stuff that doesn't age well, and we don't watch it again. That's where we're at. We don't need to digitally edit people out of things.
Yeah, millennials. If you want a bit of a freak out, look up Archie Bunker from the 1970s and 80s. If you want to be scared as to what should be shown on TV with your sensitivities, go look up Archie Bunker on YouTube, and then don't send me any messages about it. I'm not endorsing him, but if you want to be freaked out as to what used to be acceptable, go look that up.
Well, when Peter Jackson actually releases his Dam Busters remake, there's an interesting discussion around that, just as far as historical accuracies and you know the sort of social mores of the day. Are you familiar with the Dam Busters story?
Yeah, very much so. Are you going to talk about N-word the dog?
N-word the dog.
Yeah.
I have actually seen both versions of that film, the one where they edit that out. And they're just like, cool, it was never a part of the story because we don't want to say the N-word. And then I think it was one Anzac Day, I was watching Māori TV. And I was like, oh, cool, Dam Busters, haven't seen that for years. And it popped up with a title card that explained what was going to be in it.
Yeah,
and that it was a historical fact. And so we've left the film unedited. And I was like, oh, I wonder what that means. And then, bam, N-bomb. And I'm like, oh, shit. And I looked it up and I was like, oh, okay, it's historically accurate. You know, it's just how they were back then.
I got called into my bosses. I was the most complained about host on News Talk ZB. Have I ever told you that?
No, but do you have the trophy to go with it? Is it
I don't wear that with as much pride as I used to, because it caused me quite a lot of trouble in the radio industry after I left News Talk ZB. But I got told by a boss here I was the most complained about host on News Talk ZB, and I got called into the office. Well, not really actually called into the office. One night I did talk back on that, like for 6 hours, because that was one of the questions about Peter Jackson's version. Would he include N-word the dog? Like, would they use that? And I had that, but we didn't say N-word the dog. We used the word because it was referencing the script. And that's when I got told, even though it was in context and it was use it like from the script, and I was reading the bits out and that sort of thing. I got told at that point that the two most offensive words on radio, like the ones that will always come down on, are the N-word and the C-word. N-word's actually first, I think, followed by the C-word, which I thought was interesting, apart from anything else. So yes, I've done 6 hours of talk back on that exact thing you were talking about.
For that?
I didn't actually get in trouble. No, I didn't actually get in trouble. I just got told Because what happened was I got people phoning up. The older people, older white people, ZB, talking about there used to be a paint color you could buy for your house called N Brown. That was the name of the paint in the shop. And a woman phoned me up and she said, oh, that used to be the name of our dog. Like, so she might have been 70 or 80. And so she was talking about, the 1950s probably. And I went, oh, yeah, you wouldn't call your dog that today, would you? And she went, yeah. And I said, you liar. Of course you wouldn't, even if you don't care about it. Are you telling me you're going to go on your front doorstep and call your dog's name if you name your dog that today? And the argumentative ones would always say, yeah, of course, there's nothing wrong with it, but don't believe them at all.
Okay, so my dad has I've mentioned my dad before. He's spent most of his life hanging around a motorcycle gang while not being part of it. But they all have nicknames, and one of his better mates there, his nickname is N-word. And it's just a lot of fun watching my mum, who definitely doesn't want to say that, but has never once referred to him by his real name, just work its way out of her mouth. Oh, your dad's popped round to his friend's place. Oh, what friend? Oh, no. Where's he gone? Oh, up around the road. And he was on he won a big lotto win a few years back and was on a documentary about lotto winners, and they had to put his real name up, and they were interviewing his friends about this big lotto win, and they go, oh, what did you think about David's big lotto win? David? Oh, you mean?
I was going to say, it's such a, and look, and I've said this before, right? This is the reason I don't think I'll ever be able to be cancelled, because I'm always honest about what I've done. I've said that word, and I grew up on NWA, Ice-T, Ice Cube. That was the music I grew up on. I've never used that word as an offensive word against someone or a derogatory term, but that word has come out of my mouth in my younger days a lot because that was the music I listened to. Now it doesn't, obviously, for other reasons. I'm growing up and I understand better and I've learned. But you hear these things sometimes about, oh, and he admitted to using the N-word, let's cancel. I'm just straight up about it. When you listen to that kind of music and you're 17 and you sing along with the lyrics, that word's come out of my mouth many, many times. But
yeah.
Did you know? Now we may have lost all 7 of our viewers now, but that's so be it, so to be it. Did you know? And this is the difference within society today. I'm looking at a news story on my screen. The news story is about locations in North Canterbury. Locations in North Canterbury in 2016 that were called.
Oh yes, yeah.
N-word stream and N-word head. Now, I don't even feel comfortable bringing that document up, even though it's a news article from 2016 talking about it. But think about this, New Zealand. 6 years ago, that word, N-word, was still being used to name locations within this country.
Yeah. And the guy that brought it up with whatever the mapping department is, he copped quite a lot of flack for trying to delete history, trying to change history. And it's like, I don't know if you want that history.
Hey, it's time for us to wrap up, I think. I'm going to go and just put a few of these messages up there that have come in for several topics as well. Oh, we've done that whenever. That's about the people trying to redress the starting points for negotiations. The main problem with mom and pop landlords, but is not with mom and pop landlords, but with large companies. Yeah. They don't even need to get a mortgage to purchase a deep dive. Yep, fair enough. Same again, since most of the value these days in the land, not the residence or the house, companies can afford to run a house into the ground and still sell on the property onwards, large profits, etc., etc. Jay says tenants don't complain if the landlord rocks up unannounced because the landlord can keep their bond / kick them out if they are mildly annoyed with the tenant. A little bit of love for Dunedin. I was on Dundas Street, says Kim. Obviously in Dunedin as a student. Simple says university-owned student accommodation and government house could implement this, but most landlords couldn't afford it. This is the $60 a week thing we were talking about. A better control could be a mortgage plus 20%. Houses must meet the standards. And I think this is probably supposed to be Luxon, but it says Lotto was silent for over a week with no explanation until he came back. Very amateurish stuff from National. They need to say why he was not around when he left. Yeah, well, I guess there's also what about the press corps at Parliament? Why didn't we hear from them about Luxon being on holiday?
Yeah, because they would have known. Willis was going around doing the interview circuit and that sort of stuff. And it's really easy to say, hey, look, we've got the deputy leader because Christopher Luxon's away on recess.
Yeah,
fine, non-story at that point. Even if that story went up saying today I was in Te Puke, if everybody else was saying, well, he's away on recess, people would have overlooked that. And again, that's amateur stuff.
So part of the problem, and I thought about this when I said, could the Prime Minister get a holiday in New Zealand? Or I bet you the Prime Minister will have a post at some stage before the election. That'll be from the day before. I guess one of the parts of this, which is not the same, is then he was also in Hawaii, which is not necessarily an issue in of it by itself, but it appears that he's trying to publicly run away from his luxurious lifestyle whilst publicly talking about how tough it is to live at the moment. So if it happens to the PM, it probably wouldn't therefore be, and whilst it goes up, she's in Vancouver skiing or something, it'll probably be she's still working. It just went up from yesterday to today. So there's probably will be a difference here. It would have to be an apples with apples scenario.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Now, tomorrow night, we're going to replay a conversation, which actually is being released tomorrow morning. I was kind of umming and ahhing about this, but I got a chance to spend an hour and a quarter with the director of the Trump documentary Unprecedented. And so we've decided we're going to replay that tomorrow night here as well. So it's actually going to be released tomorrow morning, but we're a little community here and we get together and hang out and watch things and talk things together. So I probably will jump into the chat at some stage and see what you guys are talking about. But the actual show will be an hour and a quarter and it will just be repeating it. So don't freak out when you join us and the show looks like this.
Oh, it's unrecognizable. Green border.
Because that's the podcast colors. So when you come tomorrow night, it's going to look like this. It's not going to look like this, which is the big hairy news colors. But that's because it's actually a really interesting conversation with a really interesting guy who got to spend, he used this term, he talked about the buffer. There is literally space around the president of the United States that they call the buffer, i.e. no one gets into the buffer. So it's like, Anna Brooks talks about magic here. It's like the president literally has magic here because he's got a buffer around him that people are not allowed to cross. These guys got so much access, they got into the buffer whenever they wanted to. So it's a really interesting conversation with a guy who has insight like no one else in the world does. It's been picked up by several media outlets in New Zealand running with it as well, just because it's got some interest to it. And we will play it out here tomorrow night from 10 p.m. And I hope you enjoy it. Other than that, we'll be back to the show as per normal Monday night from 10 p.m. Anything else you want to leave off with, Chu?
Nah, I'm good, man. I look forward to seeing this tomorrow, actually.
Lovely to be with you all. Thank you for joining us. Look, we've still got people watching. I thought after I told people that at one stage in my life, singing along with songs that the word was mentioned, that maybe they'd all disappear. Maybe that speaks more about you for not cancelling me than it does about me, just quietly. All right, team. Love you all. See you later. Talk to you on Monday. Ciao.